Jason Alvarez had delivered to gated communities, rural backroads, even a compound with a goat that chased him. But nothing prepared him for Rose Hill Estates. The GPS blinked green as he turned onto the tree-lined boulevard. The houses here looked eerily identical. Trimmed lawns, flagpoles with seasonal banners, and surveillance cameras that never blinked. It was the kind of neighborhood where silence wasn't peaceful. It was stage. "Final stop," he muttered, glancing at the package in the passenger seat. It was small, light. Addressed to 12 Maple Circle. Just another doorstep drop. Jason turned into the shared driveway that separated house number 12 from its twin neighbor, eased the van to a soft stop in front of the walkway, and opened his door. Then came the screech. Tires skidded across smooth pavement as a luxury white SUV slammed to a halt inches behind his bumper. Jason flinched. The sun glared off the windshield, making it impossible to see who was behind the wheel, until the door flung open. A woman in her late 50s strutted out like a judge entering court. Blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. She wore a pink windbreaker zipped to her throat and walked like she was measuring each step for authority. Her license plate read, H0A1. "You can't park here," she barked, before he could even greet her. Jason blinked, holding the package. "Ma'am, this is the delivery zone." "This is my driveway," she snapped, jabbing her clipboard toward the ground like it proved her claim. "This is private property. You need to reverse out. Now." Jason glanced behind him. Her SUV blocked his path completely. "I can't move unless you back up." "I'm not moving until you move," she shot back. "You're trespassing." "I'm calling the police." Jason's pulse quickened. He'd heard stories. Drivers being baited, filmed, falsely accused. But he also knew his rights. The driveway was clearly shared. He wasn't even parked. He was stopped for under a minute. As she began loudly dictating her call to 911, Jason reached calmly toward the dash and tapped a small red button. His camera began recording. "Better safe than sorry," he whispered. From the corner of his eye, movement stirred. A curtain twitched across the street. A man watering his plants froze mid-spray. A teenage girl leaned against her porch railing, phone already recording. People knew who this woman was. Jason stepped out slowly, the package still in hand. "I'm not arguing," he said, voice even. "I'm delivering a package to your neighbor." "Don't take another step," she snapped, raising her phone to his face. "You are threatening me. I fear for my life." He froze. Her voice was climbing, meant to echo across security cameras, street corners, and maybe even the courtroom she clearly thought she could summon on command. But Jason wasn't playing her game. Because this time, everything was being recorded. And the police, they were already on the way. The moment Linda shouted, "I fear for my life," something in the atmosphere shifted. Jason stood frozen beside his van, the small box still tucked under his arm, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the realization that he was now in a scene far bigger than a missed delivery. Her voice had become theater, her gestures exaggerated like a bad actress begging for an encore. "I'm calling dispatch back," she yelled, tapping her phone like it owed her loyalty. "You're still here. That's resisting removal. This is harassment." Jason took a deep breath, then turned slightly, enough to make sure his dashcam had her in full view. "Ma'am, I'm not threatening you. I'm standing still." Linda's finger jabbed toward the ground again. "That doesn't matter. You're not allowed to even step foot on this property unless you're invited. I didn't invite you. You're not the recipient. The package is for 12 Maple Circle. That's the house on the left." Her head jerked slightly, a crack in the performance. But it lasted only a second before she doubled down. "Wrong. The whole driveway is mine. That house is a rental. I told the HOA I wanted it removed from shared access. It's pending approval. That makes it my space." Jason blinked. Did she just say she wanted to remove a house from shared access? Across the street, The neighbor with the watering hose had stopped pretending not to listen. He pulled out his phone. Others were joining in. One neighbor, then two, then five. Jason could feel their eyes. He wasn't just delivering a package anymore. He was the accidental star of a neighborhood showdown. Linda noticed too. She turned and barked. "Stop filming. You don't have permission." The teenage girl across the street grinned and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Public view, Karen. Ever heard of the First Amendment?" Jason swallowed a laugh but stayed still. He knew better than to antagonize someone who weaponized rules like a lawyer in a blood feud. Then came the most ominous sound yet, distant sirens. Linda straightened like royalty expecting a red carpet. "Finally," she said, smoothing her windbreaker. "Let's see what the police think of trespassing and intimidation." Jason stayed calm, even as his heart pounded. He had nothing to hide. Everything was recorded. But experience had taught him that logic didn't always win when emotions were dialed to 11. A black and white cruiser turned the corner. Lights spinning but sirens now off. It coasted to a stop, engine idling. Two officers stepped out. One of them, tall, lean, dark hair under a cap, scanned the scene with narrowed eyes. Linda marched forward, arms waving like she was hailing a cab. "Officers, thank goodness. This man has been threatening me and refusing to leave my property. I'm terrified." The taller officer nodded, but didn't look at her. His eyes were already locked on Jason, and something about his expression told Jason he wasn't the one in trouble. The officers stood for a long, tense moment, their gaze shifting from Linda to Jason, then back to each other. It was as though they were weighing the situation before speaking, but Linda didn't seem to notice the subtle exchange. Her words spilled out in a rushed, practiced monologue. "This man, this delivery driver, has blocked my driveway, trespassed on private property, and refused to leave when asked. I'm a homeowner, and I've made it clear to the HOA this driveway is mine." The taller officer, Officer Patel, Jason recognized, raised one eyebrow. His partner, Officer Morris, remained silent, but his hand hovered near the radio on his shoulder. Jason couldn't quite read Patel's expression, but there was something in his eyes that told him this wasn't his first HOA drama. Linda's hand flew out, gesturing dramatically toward Jason's van. "He's been harassing me. The whole neighborhood can see it. I have children. This could have been dangerous." This man cooled. "Ma'am, calm down," Officer Patel cut in, his voice steady and professional, but with a certain edge. "What exactly are you claiming?" Linda didn't skip a beat. "He blocked my driveway. He's not even supposed to be here. He's trespassing. I want him arrested for disturbing the peace." The officer nodded, then glanced at Jason, who remained silent, his arms crossed in a calm but confident stance. Jason was more than familiar with this script. He knew his rights, and he knew how to handle confrontational situations. Still, the air was thick with tension, the whole neighborhood watching, phones trained on the scene. He could hear whispers, the click of cameras, the soft murmur of neighbors exchanging opinions. Officer Patel turned back to Linda, raising a hand. "Ma'am, I'll need to check the property records before I can process anything." Linda's smile faltered for a moment but returned with a force. "You don't need to check. It's mine. I've had enough. This man needs to leave." But before she could say more, Jason spoke up, his voice even but carrying authority. "I've got a dash cam recording the entire situation, including my delivery manifest. If you'd like to see it, I can show you." Officer Patel's eyes flickered, something almost like recognition crossing his face. "You're a delivery driver, correct?" "That's right," Jason answered, reaching for his phone. "This is all on camera. If you want to see how it went down, I've got the footage. The van was parked here for less than a minute while I made a drop-off. She stopped me, blocked the driveway, and threatened to call the police." Linda's face turned red. Her fingers clenched around her phone as she prepared to dial again, but Officer Patel raised a hand, stopping her. I think we'll take a look at the footage first. He turned to Jason, gesturing for him to hand over his phone. Let's see what's on this recording. Linda's lips twisted into a snarl, but she couldn't speak as Jason handed over his phone, the screen lighting up with the video of the entire encounter, her approaching the van, blocking the driveway, and yelling accusations that were clearly exaggerated. The neighborhood fell silent, all eyes now on Linda as the officer watched the footage. When it ended, Officer Patel finally spoke, his voice colder than before. I see. Linda Cartwright, you filed a false police report and obstructed a lawful delivery. That's serious. He paused, glancing at his partner. Morris, would you take a statement from the neighbors while I deal with this? Linda's smug expression wavered, and Jason could almost feel the shift in the air. The fragile fortress she built around herself was beginning to crack. Officer Patel turned to Linda with a calm that sent chills through the air. You're under review for multiple violations of HOA rules, Miss Cartwright. I suggest you stay quiet for now. Linda's smug expression cracked, and for a fleeting moment, she looked human, vulnerable, even. But it was gone in the blink of an eye, replaced with that same aggressive posture, her chest heaving, as she tried to regain control of the situation. This is an outrage, she stammered, her hands shaking, though whether it was from anger or fear, no one could tell. I demand to speak to a higher authority. This is my property, and I have rights. Officer Patel didn't flinch. He raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. Your rights don't extend to harassing delivery drivers or blocking public access. You've already been warned multiple times about this behavior. Before Linda could protest further, Officer Patel's partner, Officer Morris, who had been quietly observing the growing tension, stepped forward. His eyes briefly flicked to the crowd that had gathered, the neighbors now whispering among themselves. Their cameras and phones were all trained on Linda, capturing every word, every second of her meltdown. Morris approached one of the neighbors standing closest to the scene, a man with a lawnmower in hand, who had been watching the whole exchange. Sir, would you mind providing a statement? He asked. The man, whose name Jason learned was Doug, nodded eagerly. I've seen this before. She's done it to other delivery drivers. This time, though, she went too far. Do you have proof? Morris asked. Doug didn't hesitate. I've got video from last month. It's the same thing. She blocks the driveways, calls the cops on innocent people, then plays the victim. She's been harassing everyone for weeks. Officer Patel listened intently, his gaze shifting from Doug to Linda, who now stood frozen, her hands tightly clutching her phone. Her earlier defiance had been replaced with something darker, panic. You think I'm lying? Linda spat, her voice dripping with venom. Not lying, just misinformed. Officer Patel replied coolly. You've been overstepping your bounds, and this time, you'll be held accountable. The air felt electric as the crowd grew quieter, their anticipation hanging thick. Jason could feel the shift in the room. The power was no longer in Linda's hands. The tables had turned, and now she was the one under scrutiny. At that moment, a car rolled up to the curb, its tires screeching a little too loudly as it halted in front of the group. Jason's eyes flicked to the car, and he recognized the logo on the side, a local moving company. A man stepped out of the car, tall, with a muscular build, wearing a red shirt with the company's name. Hey, is everything okay here? He asked, looking between the police officers and Linda. Linda's eyes narrowed, and for a split second, there was a flash of recognition. She knew this man. Jason could tell. He was part of a moving crew that had worked at a neighboring house recently. But Linda's face shifted again. This time, there was no hint of confidence. Everything's fine, she snapped, turning her back to the man, but the unease in her voice was unmistakable. She wasn't fine. She was losing control. Officer Patel didn't miss a beat. Actually, we're just about to wrap up, Miss Cartwright. You've got some explaining to do. Linda opened her mouth to respond, but it was clear she had no more words. The house she had so carefully built on manipulation and control was crumbling. Jason stood there, still holding the package, watching as the police closed in. He couldn't help but feel a sense of relief, a sense that this was the moment when everything would finally be set right. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone. The entire neighborhood was watching, eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Neighbors, who had long been silently observing Linda's reign of terror, were now on edge, anticipating what would happen next. Cameras clicked, phones recorded, but in that stillness, Jason felt an unexpected calm wash over him. Linda Cartwright, once a commanding figure in Rose Hill Estates, now seemed small. Her face, red from shouting and frustration, betrayed the anger bubbling beneath the surface, but also an unmistakable realization. The game was up. Officer Paddle didn't waste a second. "Let's go over the footage, Miss Cartwright," he said, his voice unwavering, his eyes cold. Linda's shoulders slumped, a flicker of hesitation crossing her face, but she quickly regained her composure. "You'll see. He blocked my driveway. It's all on camera." Jason didn't flinch. With a calmness he didn't know he was capable of, he stepped forward and handed over his phone to Officer Patel. The crowd held its breath. Even the children who had been lurking behind their parents had fallen into a tense silence, eyes locked on the officer's every move. Patel tapped a few commands on the screen, then handed it to his partner, Officer Morris, who began watching the footage. The video began with Jason pulling into the shared driveway, the soft hum of his van's engine filling the silence. The footage was clear. Jason had parked just for a minute to make the delivery. Then Linda's SUV appeared out of nowhere, blocking his way, and she stormed out, waving her clipboard like a weapon. "You can't park here." Linda's voice echoed from the phone speakers. "This is my driveway. Get out." Jason's calm reply was audible. "Ma'am, I'm just delivering a package." Then came Linda's shrill accusation. "This is trespassing. Get off my property or I'll call the police." The officers watched in silence, the footage unfolding. Jason's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Linda's increasingly erratic behavior. It was clear who was in the wrong. The video continued, showing Linda blocking Jason's van, refusing to allow him to leave, her phone raised like a shield, as she claimed Jason was threatening her. As the video ended, the crowd was still as stone. Every eye was on Linda now, no longer in doubt. There was no room for manipulation here. Officer Patel turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Cartwright, you've filed a false police report. You're obstructing a delivery, and you've been harassing this man for no reason." Linda's mouth opened, but no words came out. The smug confidence that had once defined her cracked, leaving behind nothing but frustration and humiliation. I didn't," she began, but her words faltered. "Linda," Officer Patel continued, his voice flat, "this isn't the first time. Neighbors have provided footage from earlier incidents. You've been warned before about abusing your position in the HOA. It stops today." She opened her mouth to protest again, but this time, the words didn't come. The truth had been laid bare, and no amount of denial could cover it up. Linda's eyes flicked to the small crowd of neighbors, each one staring at her with a mix of disdain and relief. She knew the truth now. She had no control over this situation anymore. Officer Patel stepped forward, his voice softer but firm. "You'll be receiving a formal citation, Ms. Cartwright, and the HOA will be investigating your actions. You've crossed the line." Linda's face drained of color, her eyes wide in disbelief. "No," she whispered. "You can't." But it was too late. The weight of the law and the weight of the truth had come down on her. And this time, there was no escape. The silence was suffocating, the kind that only comes when a long-held illusion finally shatters. Linda Cartwright's confident facade had evaporated in the face of undeniable proof. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the quiet cul-de-sac as the crowd of neighbors lingered, their collective gaze heavy and unforgiving. Linda's hands trembled as she stuffed her phone into her pocket, her fingers curling into fists. Her mouth opened and closed, as if she were trying to say something, anything, to salvage the situation. But there was nothing. The weight of the moment crushed her words, leaving only the sound of her labored breathing. Officer Patel stood there, his expression cold but composed, waiting for Linda to realize that there was no way out. "Miss Cartwright," he said, his voice low, almost pitying, "this behavior has gone on long enough. You've abused your position in the HOA to intimidate and harass your neighbors. You've created a toxic environment, one that's no longer going to be tolerated." Linda's eyes darted around, her gaze landing on the neighbors who had once feared her power, now emboldened by the truth that had been laid bare. One neighbor, Doug, stepped forward, his voice steady but firm. "We've had enough, Linda. We're all sick of your games." Linda's face twisted, a mix of disbelief and rage clouding her features. "You can't do this," she spat, her voice cracking. "You think you've won, but you haven't." You'll what?" Officer Patel interrupted, his tone sharp. "You'll continue to abuse your neighbors. You'll continue to lie to the police. You'll keep bullying delivery drivers and anyone who steps onto your property." For the first time, Linda faltered. Her shoulders slumped as if the fight had gone out of her all at once. The facade of control she'd maintained for so long was crumbling, and with it, her grip on power. Jason, still standing nearby with the package in his hand, couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just a victory for him. It was a victory for every person she tried to intimidate, for every neighbor who had lived in fear of her wrath. This moment was about more than a single delivery. It was a moment of justice, long overdue. The officer turned back to Linda. "You'll be facing a fine for obstruction of justice, harassment, and filing a false report. The HOA will be conducting an internal investigation as well. I suggest you take this time to reflect on your actions, because there will be consequences." Linda's face drained of color. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. There was no escaping the web of lies she'd woven. The control she had wielded for so long had slipped through her fingers. And now, all that was left was the fallout. But as she stood there, defeated, something unexpected happened. Doug, the neighbor with the lawnmower, stepped forward again, his voice quiet but firm. "Linda, this doesn't have to be the end of everything," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "But it's going to take a lot of work to rebuild any trust around here. You've hurt a lot of people." For a split second, Linda's gaze softened, just for an instant, before she quickly masked it with a cold, defiant look. "I don't need your pity," she muttered, barely audible. Officer Morris stepped forward, his tone professional but resolute. "It's not about pity, Miss Cartwright. It's about accountability. You're not above the law, and the community won't tolerate this kind of behavior anymore." The officers turned to leave, but not before Officer Patel glanced back at Jason, offering a brief but appreciative nod. "Good work, sir," he said. "We'll take it from here." As the officers walked Linda to their squad car, the murmurs from the neighbors began to rise. But it wasn't just the whispering, it was the laughter, the collective sense of justice that had finally been served. Linda's reign of fear had ended, and Jason felt an unexpected sense of closure as he watched her being led away. The package still clutched in his hand, he turned to walk away. But before he could take another step, he heard a voice behind him. "Hey, Jason." It was Doug again, his tone lighter this time. "You ever need a hand around here, you let us know. We've got your back." Jason smiled, feeling the warmth spread through him. It wasn't just about the delivery anymore. It was about standing up for what was right. The quiet, subtle strength of the community had won the day, and Linda's toxic influence was a thing of the past. As Jason walked toward his van, the weight of the moment settled in. He hadn't just completed a delivery. He had delivered justice. Jason slid into his van, feeling a strange sense of closure, but the events from the past hour lingered in his mind. It wasn't just the confrontation with Linda. Something about the entire situation felt off, like a puzzle missing its final piece. The relief was there, but so was a nagging curiosity. He'd done his job, and the police had done theirs. But there was something unsettling about how easily Linda had collapsed in the face of truth. She was known for her tenacity, for never backing down. So why had she crumbled so quickly? As he started the engine, he noticed something odd. Across the street, a neighbor, someone Jason didn't recognize, was watching him with an intense gaze. The man stood in his front yard, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Jason couldn't place him, but there was something about his stance that felt deliberate. Before he could make sense of it, the stranger turned and walked inside his house, disappearing behind the front door. Jason shook it off. Maybe he was just another concerned neighbor, the kind who couldn't resist a good drama. He drove out of the neighborhood, but the thought of Linda and her strange, sudden collapse stayed with him. The officers had left, and the crowd had dispersed, but Jason felt an odd sense of unfinished business. Linda had been bad news, but something told him she wasn't going down quietly. Not completely. Just as he turned the corner out of Rose Hill Estates, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. It was a notification from the HOA website. Notice of violation. Linda Cartwright, Rose Hill Estates HOA president. Jason's heart skipped a beat as he clicked the notification open. Due to multiple violations, including obstruction of a lawful delivery, harassment of residents, and violation of HOA governance, a special review of Linda Cartwright's position as HOA president will be held at the next community meeting. All residents are invited to attend. Jason scoffed. He should have known. Linda was crafty, and though she had been caught in the act, the undercurrent of her power hadn't been entirely broken. But what really caught his attention was the comment thread beneath the notice. Linda Cartwright is a tyrant. We need to remove her completely from this HOA. If anyone has evidence of her misconduct, now's the time to step forward. This isn't over. She'll find a way to come back. Be ready. Jason's gut twisted. That wasn't just a notification. It was a rallying cry. Despite the official stance of the HOA, it was clear Linda still had allies in the shadows, people who weren't done protecting her. He felt a cold chill at the back of his neck. The thing was, Jason hadn't been the only one who had seen Linda's true colors. The entire neighborhood had watched her unravel, but it was clear from the messages on the HOA site that this wasn't the end. Linda had powerful connections, ones that wouldn't let her fall easily. Jason clicked off the phone and gripped the steering wheel tighter. His mind raced with the implications. This wasn't just about one woman causing trouble. This was about a network of people who would stop at nothing to hold on to power. Linda's downfall had been a public spectacle, but now Jason realized that it had only exposed the tip of the iceberg. As he drove past the familiar landmarks of Rose Hill Estates, he felt the weight of the neighborhood's unspoken tension settling in. Linda Cartwright had been defeated today, but only on the surface. The deeper fight was yet to come. And Jason had a feeling it wasn't going to be just about one delivery anymore. Jason's heart pounded as he turned the corner into his own neighborhood. Rose Hill Estates felt different now. The air seemed thicker, as though the very ground beneath his feet was shifting. Linda Cartwright might have been humiliated today, but Jason knew better than to think this was over. It wasn't just about the package anymore. It wasn't even about Linda's oppressive reign as HOA president. It was about something far more insidious, a web of influence that had been quietly controlling the neighborhood for years. And now, like the flicker of a candle in the dark, it was starting to burn bright. As he pulled into his driveway, Jason's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from an unknown number. "You made a big mistake today." Jason's pulse quickened, the words echoing in his mind. He quickly tapped out a response. "Who is this?" There was a long pause before the reply came. "You'll find out soon enough. This isn't over. Linda has more people behind her than you think. Watch your back." Jason felt a cold chill settle in his bones. This wasn't a random threat. Someone, somewhere, had been watching him, waiting. He quickly locked the doors of his van, the sudden realization sinking in that he might have just stirred up something far darker than he could have imagined. His phone buzzed once more. Another message. "There's a meeting at the HOA office tomorrow night. You should come. The truth about Linda and everyone else will finally be laid bare." Jason stared at the message, the weight of the words pressing down on him. Who was behind this? Was it just a last-ditch attempt to save Linda's career, or was there something more? The subtle undertone of menace made his skin crawl. He couldn't ignore it, not after everything that had happened. Jason locked his phone and stared out the window. The evening was fading into night, the sky tinged with the last hints of twilight. The quiet hum of the neighborhood seemed peaceful, but Jason now knew that beneath the surface there was an undercurrent of darkness that he couldn't ignore. With a deep breath, he made his decision. He had to go to that meeting. Whatever was waiting for him there, he had to face it. The truth had already started to unravel, and he wasn't about to let it slip away into the shadows. The next evening, Jason arrived early at the HOA office, the dimly lit building standing like an ancient fortress at the end of the street. As he walked up to the door, his gut twisted. The place felt like a mausoleum, silent and foreboding. He stepped inside, where a small group of neighbors were already gathered. And there, standing at the front, was Linda. But she wasn't alone. Beside her was a tall man in a suit, his sharp features exuding authority. Jason immediately recognized him. It was the same man who had been watching him earlier, the one across the street. His steely gaze locked onto Jason as he walked in, and for the briefest moment, there was a flicker of something cold in his eyes. "You've made quite an impression, haven't you?" the man said, his voice smooth, calculated. "But you're not the only one with a stake in this neighborhood." Jason's heart skipped a beat as he realized the truth. Linda wasn't the only puppet master in Rose Hill Estates. She had a silent partner, someone much more dangerous, someone with far-reaching influence. And now, Jason was trapped in a web far larger than he had ever imagined.